The restaurant, Bellevue, was an oasis of understated sophistication in the heart of the city. Its crystal chandeliers cast a soft glow over snow-white tablecloths, while silver cutlery clinked to the rhythm of hushed conversations. The customers were carefully chosen, and every detail of the environment exuded exclusivity and status. There, between shadows and lights, secrets were whispered in muffled tones, far from curious ears. Emma Davis-Dash, a 25-year-old woman, adjusted her uniform as she gazed at the dining room from outside. The 5 years she had spent serving there had provided her with a routine that, while discreet, allowed her to observe the lives of the elite. It was as if she were part of a grand play, a backdrop of wealth and power, but where she would never be one of the protagonists. Her gentle eyes, yet weary from exhaustion, saw much more than they let on. She entered the main dining room and quickly greeted a few colleagues. She knew the night would be intense, as all the others had been. But there was something different in the air. A murmur swept across the room. It was the arrival of Evelyn Carter Dash, a fashion magnate who had achieved meteoric stardom in recent years. Evelyn was the new icon of high society, known for both her beauty and her ruthless attitude in business. When Emma finally spotted Evelyn, her eyes froze for a moment. It wasn't just the intimidating presence of the young entrepreneur that struck her, but what that woman represented for her and her family. Evelyn, with her impeccable posture and cold smile, was surrounded by sycophants, men and women who dared not challenge her. It was as if she carried an aura of power capable of bending anyone to her will. Emma took a deep breath and approached. "Dash, good evening, Ms. Carter. May I bring you something to drink?" Her voice was steady, but inside she trembled. She knew what Evelyn had done in the past. Evelyn barely glanced up from the menu. "Dash, an extra dry martini. And be careful with the number of olives. I have no patience for sloppiness today." Emma noted the order, but before she could step away, Evelyn lifted her gaze, a glimmer of recognition in her eyes. "Dash, you look familiar. How long have you worked here?" "5 years, Ms. Carter." Emma tried to maintain a neutral tone. Evelyn smirked slightly, a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Dash, 5 years in the same place? Fascinating. Some people simply lack ambition, don't they?" The restaurant was in its usual elegant silence until a shrill sound shattered the refined atmosphere. Evelyn Carter, with a look of pure disdain, picked up the plate of food in front of her and, without any warning, hurled it directly at Emma. "This is horrible. Too much salt. Do you want to poison me?" Evelyn shouted, her eyes fixed on the waitress. The food flew through the air and landed at Emma's feet, splattering her uniform. The impact left everyone around in silence, but Evelyn didn't flinch. Her face exhibited a cruel coldness, as if humiliating someone were a mundane routine. "You are completely incompetent. Bring something decent this time. If you even know what that means." Her voice was cutting, like a sharp blade. Emma, paralyzed for a moment, felt her face burn with shame, but inside, anger began to swell. Evelyn wasn't just arrogant. She was cruel, cold, wicked. And in that instant, Emma knew she couldn't let it go unpunished. Emma felt her face flush, but she didn't react. She turned to fetch the drink. Evelyn's cruel words echoed in her mind, bringing forth memories she preferred to keep buried. As she walked toward the bar, Emma felt the memories returning, as if each step pushed her deeper into the past. Alice Dash, her younger sister, had been a promising young woman full of dreams, just 3 years ago. Alice's shine, as she aspired to be a model, made her stand out in any room. She had caught the attention of some influential people in the fashion industry, including Evelyn Carter, who was beginning to expand her empire. Alice, then 19 years old, had received the opportunity of her dreams, to walk for Evelyn's new promising brand. However, what seemed to be the start of a brilliant career quickly turned into a nightmare. During a crucial photo shoot for the brand's launch, Alice was subjected to abusive conditions. Evelyn's team was hostile, demanding that Alice make risky poses until an accident occurred, and Alice injured her leg. Instead of supporting her, Evelyn took advantage of the situation to publicly blame Alice for the failure of the shoot, claiming she had been irresponsible. The tabloids, always hungry for scandals, seized the moment. Evelyn, now with growing influence, manipulated the media to ensure that Alice's name was ruined in the fashion industry. Within a few months, Alice's promising career was destroyed. She could no longer find work, her confidence plummeted, and depression took over her life. Emma arrived at the bar, struggling to control her rising anger. The bartender, Marco, noticed her expression and offered her a sympathetic glance. "Something wrong, Emma?" She shook her head. "Just a difficult night." Marco prepared Evelyn's martini while Emma tried to gather her strength. With each passing day, the feeling of helplessness at watching her sister wither away was unbearable. "You seem distant lately," Marco commented, handing her the drink. "Is something going on?" Emma looked at him but hesitated. She knew that if she said anything, she risked being overheard by someone unwanted. "I'm fine, Marco. Thanks." She took the martini and returned to the main room, feeling the weight of what was to come. When she delivered the drink to Evelyn, the young mogul was in a heated discussion with her group about the fashion show that would take place in 2 weeks. "I won't accept mistakes. Do you understand? The next show must be perfect, or many of you will be off my contact list forever." Evelyn spoke with a cutting coldness. As Emma tried to exit discreetly, her slightly trembling hand accidentally brushed against Evelyn's arm, spilling some of the drink onto the designer dress the businesswoman was wearing. The room fell silent. "You are completely incompetent." Evelyn stood up, her voice reverberating through the hall. "Do you know how much this dress costs? I bet you don't earn that in a year. How dare you?" Emma, mortified, tried to apologize. "I'm so sorry, it was an accident. You can what? Pay for it. Fix it." Evelyn interrupted, stepping closer with a look of pure disdain. "You are pathetic. People like you have no place near me. Remember that." Emma's eyes filled with tears, but she managed to step away before allowing them to fall. Every word from Evelyn cut her like knives. She passed by tables, feeling the pitying gazes of other patrons as she sought refuge in the restaurant's back room. There, in the safety of the kitchen, she leaned against the wall, trying to catch her breath. What Evelyn didn't know was that she had already destroyed much more than just a simple dress that night. When Emma returned home that night, she found Alice sitting in the living room, lost in thought. The spark that used to light up her eyes had long since disappeared. She hardly spoke about her days, avoiding any mention of the past. Emma knew that the incident with Evelyn still consumed her sister, but she didn't know how to help her move on. "How was work?" Alice asked, her voice soft but distant. Emma hesitated. "It was complicated." Evelyn Carter showed up at the restaurant. Alice raised her eyes for the first time, a mix of pain and anger crossing her face. "She was there." Emma nodded, feeling the tension rise. "Yeah, and she's still the same. Cold, cruel. As if nothing ever happened." "Nothing ever happened for her, Emma." She walked away unscathed. Alice stood up, pacing back and forth. "And I was destroyed." The sadness and anger on Alice's face were palpable. Emma approached her, trying to console her. "You haven't been destroyed, Alice. We still have a chance to fix this." Alice shook her head, her eyes glistening. "I will never be who I was, Emma. Never." Emma sat down next to her, holding her hands. "But we can make her pay for what she did. We can expose the truth. She has a huge show in 2 weeks, right? It will have all the media attention." "And what can we do?" Alice asked, skeptical. Emma took a deep breath, the plan starting to form in her mind. "I work at Bellevue, Alice. and Bellevue will be catering Evelyn's event. I can be there. We can do something. But we need evidence. Alice seemed to ponder, her conflicting emotions swirling. She had never considered confrontation, but the idea of seeing Evelyn pay for what she had done was tempting. Do you think we can do this? Alice asked, her voice hesitant but with a spark of hope. I know we can, Emma replied with determination. She needs to be held accountable. In the days that followed, Emma began working on her plan. They needed concrete evidence to expose Evelyn. Alice, initially reluctant, began to collaborate, revealing details of conversations and meetings she had had with Evelyn's team. There were times, Alice said one night, when I could hear her talking about me with the others. How I was expendable, just a piece in her game. The problem is that I have nothing recorded. Emma knew they would need more than memories. We need something more solid. Some recording, emails, anything that can be released at the right time. The power of Evelyn Carter in the fashion world was not limited to her creative talent, but also to her ability to manipulate the narrative in her favor, especially when things didn't go as expected. This was exactly what happened when Laura Mendez, a young and promising model at 21, fell victim to Evelyn's cruelty and calculated nature. During a photo shoot for Evelyn's new autumn collection, Laura was pushed beyond her limits. What was supposed to be a few hours of shooting stretched into an entire day. The conditions on set were exhausting. Hot lights, uncomfortable poses, and constant pressure to be perfect. Evelyn watched from a distance, like a queen controlling every piece on the board. Laura, who had been without food or rest for hours, began to show signs of fatigue. Trying to maintain professionalism, she politely asked for a break. Break. Evelyn scoffed, her voice cutting through the air like a blade. If you can't handle the basics, maybe modeling isn't for you. Real models don't get tired. With everyone's eyes fixed on her, Laura tried to keep her composure. But her exhausted body couldn't withstand the pressure. In an attempt to maintain her balance during a pose, she stumbled, falling and ripping one of the expensive dresses from the collection. Evelyn was furious. Not because of the damage to the dress, she had dozens of others at her disposal, but because of the public failure of the young model in front of her team. You ruined everything, Evelyn yelled, advancing toward Laura. I gave you a golden opportunity, and you wasted it. You'll never work in this industry again. Get out of my sight before I make sure no one ever hears of you again. Laura left the set in tears, humiliated and devastated. However, Evelyn knew that to maintain her impeccable image, she needed to manipulate the narrative. And that's exactly what she did. With her vast influence, Evelyn contacted her press connections. And within days, the headlines didn't mention the brutality on set, but instead focused on Lara's problematic behavior. Inexperienced model causes chaos on photoshoot with Evelyn Carter, read one article. Laura Mendez, promising yet out of control, was the headline of another publication. Evelyn ensured that the young woman was blamed for the incident, painting her as a professional incapable of handling pressure. Her reputation, which had barely begun to form, was quickly destroyed. In the backrooms of fashion, the voices that tried to defend Laura were swiftly silenced. Evelyn controlled not only the narrative but also careers. Her power was immense, and she used it without hesitation to keep her empire intact, regardless of how many young women were crushed in the process. This new tragedy reached Emma, the young waitress from Bellevue. Upon reading the news, Emma felt a painful déjà vu. The same destructive tactics that had been used against her sister, Alice, were now being directed at another young model. Emma, who had long harbored resentment for what Evelyn had done to Alice, now saw that the magnate continued to ruin lives without remorse. Evelyn's abuse of power was more evident than ever, and watching Laura Mendez fall victim to the same cruel, public manipulation ignited a flame of indignation in Emma. It was at that moment that Emma made the decision to expose Evelyn Carter once and for all. She could not allow anyone else to be destroyed by the selfishness, the thirst for control, and the limitless cruelty of that woman. The idea of exposing Evelyn and destroying her reputation grew stronger each day. Emma and Alice spent nights reminiscing about the details of what had happened, and with every conversation, Emma's anger intensified. She was not just defending her sister, she was rebelling against a system that crushed people like them, without remorse. It was during one of these conversations that Alice remembered something important. I remember that, on the last day before everything fell apart, I had a meeting with one of her marketing team members. Alice said, her eyes distant. He didn't like Evelyn, and that day, I think he mentioned something about how she manipulated contracts and used her influence to ruin careers. Emma's eyes widened. Do you think this team member could help us? Maybe, Alice replied hesitantly. But I don't know if he would be willing to take the risk. He knew Evelyn was dangerous, and it's not like it would be easy to prove something like that. I don't even remember his name. Emma fell silent for a moment, pondering. Even if he doesn't help us, if we can find him, maybe he has information we can use. Determined, the sisters began their search for clues. They dove into the social media accounts of Alice's former co-workers, trying to track down anyone who had been involved with Evelyn's team at the time of the incident. Alice recognized a few people, but none seemed to be the potential contact they needed. Until one night, while scrolling through old photos, Alice suddenly stopped, staring at a familiar face. It's him, Alice said, pointing to a man in a group photo. His name was David. Yes. He was one of Evelyn's marketing assistants back then. I remember he always seemed uncomfortable when she was around. Emma smiled, feeling a thread of hope. Let's find him. With this new name in hand, Emma conducted meticulous research, scouring social media and job sites until she finally located David. He now worked at a modest marketing agency, far removed from the glitz and glamour surrounding Evelyn. Emma and Alice decided to visit him at the office, believing that if anyone could help them, it would be him. When they arrived at David's small office, the sisters were nervous but determined. Emma went in first, and David greeted her with a polite smile, showing no sign of recognition. However, when Alice appeared, David's face went pale. Alice? My God, I thought I'd never see you again. David gestured for them to sit down, clearly shaken. The air in the small office grew tense as Alice began to explain why they were there. We know what Evelyn did, Alice said firmly. You were there, David. You saw how she manipulated me and ruined my career. She used you too, and now we need your help to expose her. David looked at Alice, then at Emma. He seemed torn between fear and the desire to speak. After a long sigh, he finally started to open up. I knew this day would come back to haunt Evelyn, he said, his voice hesitant. She used her influence in every way possible to ensure that no one dared to speak about what happened to you, Alice. But I'm not a powerful man, and back then, I just wanted to survive at work. Emma, impatient, leaned forward. David, we need proof. And we know you have something, some kind of document or conversation that can show just how cruel and calculating she was. We need your help to bring her down. David looked down, clearly uncomfortable, but finally nodded. I have some old emails. And, once, I recorded a meeting where Evelyn, in clear terms, talked about how she would clean up the career of anyone who opposed her. I didn't use it back then for fear of losing my job, but maybe it's time. He got up and went to his personal file, where he retrieved a USB drive. Here are the recordings and the emails. But be careful. Exposing Evelyn won't be easy. She has a lot of influence, and if she finds out you're plotting something, she won't know, Emma said with determination. Thank you, David. With this, we have what we need to take her down. Back at the apartment, Emma and Alice began to review the contents of the USB drive. The recordings clearly showed Evelyn's true face: manipulative, controlling, and willing to crush anyone in her path. The emails detailed schemes to tarnish Alice's reputation, as well as others who had been harmed by the young mogul. Alice remained silent as she listened to the recording of Evelyn speaking about her, belittling her talent and mocking her naivety. With each word, Alice's emotions swung between sadness and anger. Emma knew that with this evidence, they finally had a chance to make Evelyn pay. "Now we need a plan," Emma said, her eyes fixed on the monitor. "Evelyn's fashion show will be the perfect opportunity to expose everything. The media will be there, and that will leave her with nowhere to run." Alice still looked nervous. What if she has some trick up her sleeve? Evelyn is dangerous. Emma. She won't take this lying down. Emma nodded, understanding her sister's concern. She might try, but this time it won't work. We're not alone. Emma decided that the first step would be to ensure their presence at the event. As a waitress at Bellevue, she knew the restaurant would be responsible for the cocktail. She just needed a push to be in the right place. The next day, Emma went to speak with Giuseppe, the head chef of the restaurant. They had a good relationship, and she knew she could count on his help. "Giuseppe, I need a favor. I need to work at Evelyn Carter's event." The chef raised his eyebrows. "Evelyn Carter? After what happened the last time she was here, Emma? I don't think it's a good idea for you to get close to that woman again." Emma explained the situation in general terms, without revealing all the details. She told how Evelyn had ruined her sister's life and how much she wanted to be at that event to expose her. Giuseppe fell silent for a moment, pondering. "Emma, you know I'll help you as much as I can. But this woman has a lot of influence. If you do something to irritate her, it could be dangerous." Emma nodded, feeling the tension in the air. "I understand, Giuseppe. But I need to be there. I know what I'm doing." After a few moments of hesitation, Giuseppe sighed and agreed. "All right, Emma. I'll put you on the event team. Just be careful, okay?" The event hall of the city's most luxurious hotel was illuminated by large crystal chandeliers. Celebrities and the elite of fashion entered, one by one, under the glare of cameras. The event, the highly anticipated Autumn-Winter Collection fashion show by Evelyn Carter, was the pinnacle of the year in the fashion world. Emma, dressed in the impeccable uniform of Bellevue, circulated among the guests, serving drinks and canapés. Her eyes were fixed on Evelyn, who was at the center of all attention. The young magnate wore a smile of pure success, completely ignoring the storm that was approaching. Alice, disguised as a production assistant, was positioned near the backstage, waiting for the right moment. The pen drive with the evidence was in her pocket, and the plan was simple. At the moment Evelyn was applauded after the show, they would expose everything. Journalists, fashion influencers, and celebrities would be there to witness the downfall of the woman they despised. When the show ended, the crowd erupted in applause. Evelyn stepped onto the stage, exuding confidence, ready to thank everyone for her success. Emma took a deep breath, knowing that it was now or never. She approached the stage, her heart racing. "Sorry to interrupt, Miss Carter." Her voice rang out loud enough to silence the room. All eyes turned to her. Evelyn froze for a moment, surprised. "What are you doing here?" Evelyn asked, with a cold smile. "I'm here to expose the truth about who you really are." The room fell silent. Alice walked to the center, holding the pen drive in her hands. "Evelyn, 3 years ago, you ruined my life. But today, I'm going to show the world the real Evelyn Carter." Alice handed the pen drive to one of the most influential fashion journalists, who quickly connected it to a computer, and the recordings began to play. Evelyn, in a meeting, spoke contemptuously about the models, manipulating their fates and ruining careers. The faces of the guests changed from fascination to revulsion. Muted conversations began to fill the hall as Evelyn remained still, her eyes darkening. Chaos erupted in the hall as the recordings of Evelyn continued to play. The once untouchable young magnate began to lose control of the situation. The confident smile she wore had completely vanished. She stepped forward, trying to defend herself. These recordings are out of context. This is a conspiracy against me. But the evidence was too strong to be ignored. The journalists present were already taking notes, recording videos, ready to take the story public. Evelyn's empire was beginning to crumble before her eyes. It was then that Evelyn attempted her last move. With her eyes fixed on Alice and Emma, she approached one of the security guards, whispering something in his ear. Within minutes, the security guard approached Alice, trying to force her out of the event. But something unexpected happened. Suddenly, David Dash, the former marketing assistant, entered the hall. He had been watching everything from a distance, but now, seeing Evelyn's actions, he decided to intervene. "Let her go," David ordered the security guard. "If anyone should be removed from this event, it's Evelyn Carter." Evelyn turned to David, surprised. "What are you doing here?" "I'm doing what I should have done 3 years ago," David replied firmly. "I'm finally exposing your lies. I won't stay silent while you destroy other people's lives." David's presence, combined with the evidence and the support of the press, sealed Evelyn's fate. She looked around, realizing that she was completely alone. Her empire was collapsing, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. The days that followed the fashion show were a true whirlwind in Evelyn Carter's life. The press spared no criticism or reports about her manipulations and abusive behavior. Her brand began to lose contracts, and her reputation was irreparably tarnished. Meanwhile, Alice started receiving job offers from modeling agencies that recognized her true talent. For the first time in years, she felt that she could rebuild her career and her life, away from the shadows of Evelyn. Emma, for her part, felt a deep sense of relief. Although she knew that nothing could completely erase what had happened, justice had finally been served. She and Alice had exposed the truth, and Evelyn would pay for every person she had trampled on. Days later, Emma received an anonymous letter. Inside, there was an unexpected confession. Giuseppe Dash, the chef who had helped her get into the event, revealed that he was the uncle of one of the models who had also been harmed by Evelyn in the past. He had planned everything from the beginning, using Emma and Alice as key pieces to bring down Evelyn. His revenge, like theirs, was finally complete. Evelyn Carter lost everything. Her castle of lies crumbled, and she was reduced to a shadow of what she once was. The fashion world moved on, but Evelyn was forgotten, forever remembered as the example that no one is untouchable when the truth comes to light. Evelyn Carter was used to being the center of attention, the woman who controlled everything and everyone around her. However, the last few months had been devastating. Her lies, manipulations, and abuse of power finally came to light, and now she found herself completely alone. The empire she had built on the pain and suffering of others had collapsed quickly and irreversibly. Sitting in the luxurious but now empty penthouse that once hosted glamorous parties and gatherings, Evelyn watched the city below with a sense of emptiness she had never felt before. The last time she had been in public was 3 weeks ago when she tried to regain control of her narrative in a televised interview. She attempted once again to blame others for her mistakes, claiming that Laura, Alice, and so many other models had been incompetent or ungrateful. But this time, no one believed her. The press that had always supported Evelyn now turned against her. Her connections in the industry evaporated overnight, and her friends, those who laughed at her jokes and boasted about being by her side, simply disappeared when she needed them the most. Evelyn finally understood what she had always refused to see. Her power was fragile dash, sustained only by the fear she inspired in people and the influence she had built by manipulating the truth. In the mirror, Evelyn barely recognized herself. The woman who once took pride in her impeccable appearance now saw deep dark circles, disheveled hair, and a weary expression. For the first time, she felt the weight of isolation and the true consequences of her actions. How did I end up like this? She murmured to herself, not expecting an answer. The truth was that, for the first time, Evelyn felt something she had never allowed herself to. Vulnerability. What she had always feared, losing control, being seen as weak, now dominated her completely. And as she reflected on her ruin, she began to realize that everything she believed to be important, money, power, status, meant nothing without true people by her side. She remembered when she started her career, young and full of ambition. At first, she just wanted to be recognized. She wanted to leave her mark. But as success grew, the hunger for more power consumed her, and she began to see people as tools, disposable and replaceable. Now, without friends, allies, or privileges, Evelyn felt for the first time the weight of the lives she had destroyed. The sound of the empty apartment disturbed her. The silence was almost unbearable. Before, loneliness had never bothered her. She saw it as a sign of her independence and superiority. But now, the silence was a cruel reminder of how her life had become devoid of meaning. She picked up her phone and scrolled through her contacts. Once, this list was a symbol of her influence. Models, magazine editors, designers, brand executives. Now, every name there was a reminder of who had abandoned her. Evelyn had no one left to turn to. Her finger hesitated as it passed over the name, David, the former marketing assistant who had helped expose her. He had always been kind, but Evelyn had never treated him as an equal. She remembered how she had manipulated him, used him to cover her schemes, and then discarded him. Now she wondered if he, or any of the others she had harmed, would be able to forgive her. For a brief moment, she thought about calling, apologizing. But pride was still there, resisting. Was it possible that she, Evelyn Carter, had the strength to admit her failures? Was it too late to try to repair the damage she had caused? She threw the phone onto the sofa and stood up, walking to the window. The view of the city, once a reminder of her dominance over the world, was now a metaphor for her solitude. She, who had once been on top, was now in the deepest abyss. Evelyn realized that life was no longer about maintaining control at any cost. Money and status were not enough to fill the void of her existence. She thought of Alice and Laura and all the other women she had harmed to maintain her empire. In her mind, Evelyn always believed she was just playing the fashion game, doing whatever it took to survive. But now, she saw that her actions were more than just business strategies. They were cruel, selfish, and inhumane. I need to change, she whispered, finally accepting the truth. But changing wouldn't be easy. The consequences of her actions were everywhere. Her brand was bankrupt, her reputation destroyed, and the world was not willing to forgive her so easily. But Evelyn knew that if she continued on this path, without reflecting and trying to be a better person, she would end up consumed by the hatred she had built over the years. That night, Evelyn made a decision. She would seek out the people she had harmed. She knew it would be difficult, perhaps impossible, to gain their forgiveness. But this would be her first step toward rebuilding something real. She understood that true success was not in accumulating money or crushing others, but in reconnecting with the humanity she had lost in the process of her rise. She looked at her reflection once more. This time, the image was not of someone powerful, but of someone who desperately needed redemption. Deep down, Evelyn knew that if she didn't change now, she would never change. She had seen the worst of herself, and all she had left was one choice: to start over, even from scratch, without privileges, without her fortune, but with something she had never valued before: the chance to become a better person. If you've made it this far, don't forget to like the video if you enjoyed the story, and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next chapters of this plot full of twists. Activate the bell to be notified as soon as we publish the conclusion of this journey of revenge and redemption. And let us know in the comments. Do you think Evelyn deserves a second chance, or is her fall inevitable? We want to hear your opinion.